Okay, so today was a hearing on part of the state of Idaho versus Koberger case, the Idaho 4 case, pertaining to the fourth and fifth motions to compel, which, as far as we know, deal with the CAST report and the IGG. So today they called Detective Lawrence Mowery from the Moscow Police Department because he couldn't show up on May 30th for the actual hearings. And Ann Taylor was asking him questions about the cellular analysis and then video. But I personally thought this hearing was a waste of time. I don't know, maybe some puzzle pieces will fit when we watch next week's hearing, but it just felt like we didn't really learn a lot today, other than Mowery had just turned over some information to her like yesterday, and that he put some presentations together for the grand jury. It like really wasn't earth shattering. No new evidence was learned. But she started out by asking him what his role was with this Idaho murder case.
Do you do any work with cell phones and cell towers?
I have taken training for cell phone analysis.
Was that one of the roles that you played in this investigation? All right. And the other area that I'd like to talk to you about is the collection of videotape evidence or surveillance evidence from around the community. What was your role in that?
So we gathered a lot of data, a lot of USBs, hard drives that came in time. At one point, all of that was given to me so that I could copy it over to a server so we have it stored and backed up.
Did you inventory it at that time as you got it in, I guess?
Don't have to say inventory. I used the evidence technician to help me book them individually at the time. Right, so the USB had the name of it on it. I would label the folder, what it was, and that came from it.
Did you have any role in verifying the content of the surveillance?
No.
So Anne then went on to ask him about his qualifications for being able to do some of this analysis with the cellular technology. And he discussed that.
What training do you have for that role?
So some time ago, I went through what they say PATC training, which is cellular analysis, and I've also taken classes with CAST codes.
The cellular analysis, is that particular to the device itself, the cell phone device?
No.
That is particular to towers?
To the towers and the providers themselves.
When did you take that training?
Well, the CAST, I believe it was in 2019, and then I also did it again last year.
And the CAST that you took in 2019, that was the ENDICAC, is that right?
That was predominant again, correct?
And the CAST that you took last year was October of 2023, is that correct?
Yes.
And that was the actual CAST training?
They were both done by actual CAST members. I'm not sure if one was sponsored by the other, but they were both owned by FBI CAST members.
Now, of note, he only had a few days of training, and it's to do CAST analysis as far as using the CAST Viz program and other programs that police departments use. It doesn't actually make him like a CAST expert, because you're going to see people out there saying, well, he has to have 500 hours in order to testify as an expert at the grand jury. And there's no indication that he testified as an expert at the grand jury, only that he helped the FBI CAST agent with some of the presentation. So I think people are kind of getting a little ahead there. And then after she had asked him about his credentials, then she went right into talking about some reports she had received from him. And she received a report from him on May 3rd of 2023, and then also one that was actually emailed to her this morning. And he discusses the contents of what he sent her.
Detective Mowery, I do not have a police report for the other one that I want to talk about today. It's one that I received via email today that was written just within the last few days by you, probably. Do you know what report I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what I want to understand is we're talking about documents or records or logs that can be created by a CastViz program. The report that you wrote that I received today, when did you learn about those documents that exist according to that report?
The session logs that I found were from yesterday.
Why did you come to find them yesterday?
I was preparing for this hearing.
Okay. And those are things that existed for quite some time, is that correct?
They did.
And when you wrote about your work with CastViz in May of 2023, did you document those items?
No,
Tell me what you found when you were preparing for the motion to compel today.
I found session logs that were sent to me from the FBI.
All right. And in those session logs, how many files were there?
I don't remember, I think there were 6 or 7 different items inside.
Did you look at the CastViz 48-hour file?
I don't remember if I did at the time of reception.
Did you look at it yesterday in preparation for this hearing?
I attempted to.
All right. And how about the CastViz full log?
I attempted to yesterday.
And in this next segment, he goes on to talk about some more of the information that he found that apparently he had received quite a while ago from the FBI, but he had not sent over to the prosecution, and ergo it didn't get to the defense. Now, is this lack of oversight on his part? Possibly. We don't know if this information is actually pertinent, and that's why he had just filed it away and didn't send it on. But now it has been sent on to the defense. But the other thing is, full discovery from the prosecution isn't even needed until a September 2024 deadline. So this isn't earth-shattering that he had something that hadn't been turned over yet. Also, they discussed the AT&T 48-hour file, which would have been the information coming from the warrant he had submitted for the 2 days around November 13th, 2022. And a lot of that information would have already been turned over as part of what was done at the grand jury, the presentation at the grand jury. So it just feels like this is really not as big of a deal as some people are going to try to make it out to be. Should he have been more on top of things? Probably, but we don't know, because we don't know whether any of this was actually pertinent info or not, and if it's just redundant info that she already may have had. So we'll watch the next segment.
Appeared to be the AT&T records that possibly were inputted, as well as some JSON files that were probably produced by CastViz.
JSON files were produced by CastViz. Is that right?
I would assume that. I didn't create those files.
What date were they created?
I believe one was in December, the other was in April.
December of what year?
22,
And April of what year?
23.
Could you tell who created those?
I could not.
How did you get those?
I was provided those via email.
By who?
I made balance of the FBI.
What did you do with those?
I gave them as soon as I realized they were in my possession. I had contacted the prosecutor and gave them.
And that would be just yesterday, is that correct?
Yes.
What did you do with them prior to that time?
They were sent to me. I put them in a folder and I didn't do anything else with them. That's why I forgot them.
Okay. And that was the 48-hour file?
The 48-hour session log, yes.
How about the full file? What was contained in there?
Similar items to the 48.
What is the full file?
I believe that was the second AT&T return that we got via warrant. I wasn't able to open it to verify it.
That brings up a question for clarification. When you say second warrant return, are you talking about something that relates to Brian Koberger?
Yes, there was 2 warrants that were originally written. One that covered a 48-hour period, or the cell phone number, and there was one that was later done for a longer period of time.
And those are what you're referring to as the warrants 1 and warrant 2?
Correct. Okay. 48 and once for the longer period.
In the report that I just received today, there was reference to a loped bar file. What's that?
It is a file that I received from Agent Balance.
When did you receive that?
I want to say the modification date or the email. I honestly don't remember. Unfortunately, it was yesterday and I didn't throw this stuff together. So,
Okay. So that was one that you just found yesterday?
yes,
How about the export.kmz file? When did you find that file?
I had found that one yesterday.
Do you know when that came into your possession?
It was some time ago.
How many emails did you find when you were preparing for this hearing?
Either was 5?
Are those included for me to have now as well?
Yes.
Thank you.
Now, in this next segment, he discusses with Anne what the Cast Biz program does and how he produces the information. Basically, you just input what you get from the cell phone companies and it does the work for you. And he also talks about how he was working with the FBI cast agent and then was asked to create presentations for the grand jury. So let's take a listen.
With the Cast Biz program, what's the first thing that you did?
Once the program is open, you can drag and drop the CPR records into the program.
CDR means call detail records.
Right.
Did you do just 48-hour records or did you do full records in April of 2023?
I only did the 48-hour records.
When you put the records in, those are the call detail records and those relate to what?
To the phone that the records were coming back to.
The number you associated with Brian Koberger.
Right.
Okay. After you put those call detail records in, do you have to do anything with cell towers?
With the AT&T, no, because the cell tower locations are in the AT&T CPR.
Okay. So you put that record in, the tower locations are already part of the call detail record that you put in?
Yes.
Is that something that you have electronic on your computer and then you open your CastViz program and just import it into the program?
Yes, AT&T provides both PDF and text documents of the file, and I use the text document to put into CastViz to have it adjusted.
And when you do that, what gets exported?
Nothing. At that point, nothing is exported or created that I know of.
Can you export the session that you're working on?
You can export a session log, yes.
Did you do that?
No.
How did you create screenshots?
By using the built-in Windows snip tool, as well as the built-in Windows game console, I believe they call it the game bar, which is just accessed by hitting Windows G. That allows you to record your screen.
Are those the only two things you did, is screen clip and screen record?
Yes,
How many times did you use call detail records in the CastViz program?
probably a dozen times. I'm not entirely sure.
That was a terrible question. How many times did you use the CastViz program in relation to Brian Koberger's call detail records?
I don't know.
More than once?
I recall doing it for the grand jury because I wasn't the main lead in the call detail records investigation.
I don't understand what that means.
I wasn't the main person looking at those call detail records.
You weren't the main person with the call detail records, but you put them in the CastViz program anyway?
For the grand jury, I was requested.
Okay. What did you rely on in producing those? Producing whatever you produced for the grand jury?
Rely on what did I produce? As far as the AT&T records,
I want to know what you relied on to do that, to produce something for the grand jury.
I don't understand the question.
Okay. You weren't the main guy with the call detail records or with the CASVIZ programming. Did I understand that much right?
There was another investigator that was doing that.
Okay. But you end up involved in it somehow in April of 2023, is that right?
That's when I was asked to examine the data to provide that for the grand jury.
Okay. Was that all of your instruction?
What do you mean by that?
Well, you're asked by somebody else who's actually doing this part of the investigation in the case to produce something for the grand jury to use. And I'm curious about what you relied on, to get to that point. I want to know all the records you relied on, all of the emails, all of the conversations you relied on to produce this thing that you're not the expert for.
So I wrote the affidavit for the AT&T records, received the AT&T records. Those records were also given to another investigator who was the main investigator doing the CDR records. Prosecution then asked me to provide or create some kind of visualization of the call detail records and examine the call detail records for the 4 hours in question. That
Just to be really sure, when you talked about writing the 2 warrants for AT&T, we're talking about 2 warrants that relate to Brian Koberger. There were a lot of other warrants. Is that right?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to be really clear on that. You've taken the CAST training. Is that right?
Yes.
And you know there's a way to save your session. Is that correct?
Yes.
Now, at the end of that segment, you'll hear that she asked him if he saved any of that work, and he said no. And we'll get into that later because Ashley Jennings also asks him about that. But this next segment coming up discusses how Idaho DOT does not retain footage from their traffic cams. So they do not have any footage looking for Koberger's car from any of the traffic cams belonging to the DOT. However, that doesn't mean that there weren't other cameras along the route, because you're going to have private businesses, private property, houses, etc. But this is about the DOT.
What did you learn?
That they do not retain those.
Did you, when you say they do not retain those, do you mean they don't retain videos or pictures or both?
Well,
So Anne then goes on to ask him about video footage from a Red Star coffee company. And I'll show you where it is here on Google Maps. So here's Red Star Coffee, and it's a coffee stand that is on the main highway. You can see the intersection. It's right by the Arby's and kind of the main entrance to the campus of University of Idaho, and then Tri-State is right next to it as well. So depending on where the camera is on the building, it could have gotten car footage of him going down the highway. And then this just shows you in relation on the map. So you see the highway there, and then I'll zoom in to where Walenta and King Road and everything is, and you'll see as I zoom in, you'll spot Sigma Chi on the map here too, which is very close to the King Road house. So you can just see where that is in relation to everything.
Specific one that a couple of them I want to ask you about. One is from Red Star Coffee Shop. Do you recall receiving that video?
I do not.
Okay. And are you aware that it was booked in or brought in by Idaho State Police?
No.
How would I find out about those videos?
I don't know. You would have to go through the USB drives to find out what was given.
So you can see from that interaction that Idaho State Police was who provided the video from the coffee place. And then she asked about where she would find that video, and he said it would be on the flash drives they gave them. So the video was turned over. I'm hearing some people say that the video was lost, but it was turned over. It's just in all of that terabytes of data that the prosecution gave the defense. So apparently, Anne or her staff has not gone through all the video yet. So again, I find this another non-issue that people are going to try to make into an issue because the evidence was turned over. Now, after this, Ashley Jennings starts talking to Detective Mowery, and this is where it comes up about him not saving his sessions on the Cast Viz program.
Other than uploading the CDRs, did you change any of the settings on CastViz?
The only thing that I would have done was gone in and changed made sure that the time was correct because they were coming in at the TC. It was a coordinated time. I wanted to make sure that those were representative of the local time.
Alright, so you just changed it to Pacific.
Correct.
Any other changes?
No.
Okay. So you were talking about how it does not automatically save.
It does not.
Okay. And you chose not to save.
No, and in the exhibit that was provided, the actual text says that if you need to save a session file.
And can you tell me why didn't you save these settings?
I was creating the visualization exhibits. That's what I was doing with that.
Any reason to save the settings?
No.
Could this be recreated or redone in the same fashion?
Yes, I can.
So he explains why he didn't save his sessions on CastViz, and it's because there's no need to, because you can replicate that every time when you put in the same data. So that AT&T information he received, you put that in there, it's going to do the same thing every time. And then the only thing he went in and changed was to Pacific Standard Time. So he didn't feel the need to save his work sessions every time. But Anne's going to ask him about that again later. And then in this next segment, because they don't have the DOT cameras, because Idaho doesn't save anything, then another venue they went through was a weather app called windy.com. And let me show you what that app looks like. So this is the windy.com app, and it's actually a weather app. And I'm turning the webcam preview off, but you can see where the different webcams are. It's Pullman, there's not one in Moscow, and then there's one down near Colton, and then one down in Lewiston. So it's possible they could have looked at those also when he took that route home after the murders. And you can go 24 hours, 30 days, 12 months, and lifetime. Now I'm going back and looking. That's Pullman Moscow Airport Road, which I don't believe he took anyways. But here's Highway 195 at Uniontown. If I go back lifetime, though, it's just going like 1 day a month. But the thing you have to remember is when Mowery would have went back and looked at it, it would have been in December of 2022, so they probably would have been able to pull daily for November of 2022 with no problem. Because we're a year and a half down the road now, so it's only giving me monthly dates. So, but this is what those webcams are, and it's basically the DOT webcams. But unlike Idaho, it's actually storing it for longer on the windy.com site. So that's kind of helpful, but it sounds like most of the stuff was daytime, so it wasn't useful for the investigation.
We were directed by, I think it was Captain Corporal Payne that told me that we should look into windy.com.
And why is that?
Just to see if they retained video from the cameras themselves.
Okay, so windy.com has cameras.
They have screenshots. They basically capture the ITD cameras and put them on their website. Those images are routinely purged from their site for the administration of that.
Okay. And can you explain to me, when are those, you talked about them being purged from their site? What's that schedule?
From going onto their website yesterday, it's a public website, so I was able to go back to it. I don't remember exactly. I believe that within 24 hours, it's hourly. Within a week, it's daily. Within 12 months, it's monthly. And then after that, I believe it's I was seeing probably like 3 months or so.
Can you explain why you didn't preserve those images from Wendy.com?
When it was discussed with other investigators, we would have only gotten, I believe it was one image per day. Time frame wasn't where we were interested in, so we didn't capture that once.
So there is no evidentiary value.
None that we did.
Okay. And have you since gone back and found some screenshots?
Yes,
It's what's available on the publicly available website,
anyone can go to wendy.com and grab screenshots there.
and you've now done that.
I have,
Anything of evidentiary value?
no,
Have those been turned over anyway?
yes.
So Detective Mowery explains to Ashley Jennings that there was nothing of evidentiary value found on Wendy.com, but he did take screenshots of some of those aerial views and he sent them to the defense anyway. But then Ann Taylor starts asking him about Wendy.com, and for some reason she was under the impression that he didn't go look at that until way later and everything, of which he corrected her and stated that he went back and looked at it clear back in 2022, not just now. And when she asked him why he didn't preserve anything, he points out that it was photos from the daytime mainly.
And I thought you didn't preserve anything or go back and look at anything during your investigation. Did I misunderstand that?
So yesterday when I was directed by the prosecutor.
Okay, so yesterday the prosecutor said, go look for these things.
Yes,
But before that, you and other investigators decided not to. Did I get that right?
with the information that we were given, we were told that there would be a screenshot for the day, if I remember right, the parameters of. We did not grab those because they were not in the. Didn't see that they would be relevant.
But you didn't look back then. You waited until yesterday. Is that right?
No, we looked back then. I couldn't tell you what time. Most of the photos that were taken for the daily screenshot or the daily screenshots were daytime. And what the days kind of thing. So we didn't grab those at the time.
Okay, but you did look at the time and made a decision at the time. Do I understand that now?
Yes.
Okay.
So of course we know, because the murders occurred around 4 a.m, that obviously any photos of the roads during the daytime wouldn't be of evidentiary value. And then Anne goes on to ask him again about why he didn't save his work sessions. And long story short, it's basically because you can replicate the same thing if you put in that same AT&T data.
You would agree that if I were to take the call detail records that have the tower report in them, I would have to have the same cast version you were using to recreate what you did. Would you agree with that?
I'd have to have, if I took the regular cell call detail records and put them into a different version of cast, are you saying that it would become different?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. Let me try to be more clear about the one I was asking, and then I like yours. We might talk about your question as well. My question is, and the prosecutor suggested that your work could be recreated. And so it didn't matter that you hadn't saved your session. What I want to know is, if I have the 48-hour call detail records that contain the tower list like you have, do I have to have the Cast Viz program that you used so I can see what you did?
I don't know, because I don't know what the back end of the cast is software does. I'm just using it, so I don't know.
And you were in this Cast Viz program, at least for a while, creating exhibits that would be relied on, is that right?
Yes,
On more than one occasion, is that right?
yes.
But you didn't save your work.
We did not create a session log. We did not see the need.
Would you agree I can't see what you did without your session log? Can't examine what you did without your session log?
It's there to create the visualizations for the exhibits. That's what I use as this.
But I can't see what you did. Is that right? Is that right?
No,
No, it's not right, or no, I can't see what you did.
you cannot, but I could take those cell data or call data records, put them into assets again. Results would be what they are because we're still using the same records from AT&T to create.
So, yeah, I did not feel like today's hearing overall was anything big. I expect we'll hear some more things, of course, on the 30th, but today didn't provide any new evidence. I'm not going to really pass judgment on Mowery. I don't feel like he was purposely withholding evidence. It sounds like a lot of that had already been turned over, and what he found later was just redundant because it seemed to all pertain to what they received from AT&T that had already been presented to the grand jury. Bottom line is the final cast report is still needed from the FBI. And all of these motion to compel hearings aren't going to speed that up. The FBI is going to do what the FBI is going to do. And you saw in the Murdaugh trial that they're going to take their time on the cast report. They work on several other cases. The deadline for discovery isn't even till September for this case. There's not even a trial date set yet. So I don't expect that we're going to see the cast report from the FBI anytime soon. I know that kind of sucks, I guess, if I was the defendant, but at the same time, there's still no trial date set. So I say this a lot, but I feel like it's much ado about nothing at this point. We're just moving in slow motion because until these deadlines actually hit for discovery and we start getting towards a trial date, you're not going to see a whole lot of movement. And it's still just back and forth posturing, trying to get into the back of the heads of potential jurors. So, yeah, for me, I didn't find this a big deal. I know others will. And I know you can come in my comments and tell me why you think I should be taking this as a bigger deal than it is, and we can have a discussion.